Hey everybody, it's Jonny Bowden, and in today's episode on the fundamentals of weight loss, I'm going to talk about the question that has come up a couple of times since I started this series, which is, are grains a real food? You remember in the very first fundamental episode of this series, I said there are going to be three rules that we're going to apply, and that's just those three rules, one of which is eat real food. And the question has come in, what about grains? Are they a real food? And the thing about grains is that you have to process them in order to eat them. Nobody just walks through a field and grabs a stalk of wheat and starts munching on it. It's got to be processed. It's got to be pulverized and turned into a flour and then baked into a bread or a cereal, and all kinds of stuff are added to it. And these are the grains that we're consuming. And the fact that it says made with whole grains is BS, because they all start as whole grains. How do they wind up is the question. And is there really all that much benefit to whole grains in the first place? That's something that we'll probably get into at some point, and that's something that's hotly debated in the diet community and the nutrition community. But for all intents and purposes, since the only rule you've got to apply is it a real food? And we're asking that about grains. It's a modified answer. In their natural state, they're not a real food. They are very much an artifact of the agricultural revolution, which is a mere 10,000, 11,000 years ago. Not a lot when you think about the time frame of the human genus. So many people feel we haven't acclimated to that enough. And in the form that we eat grains, the highly processed form that we eat them, they are highly inflammatory. Even in the whole grain form, they can be inflammatory for some people because of gluten and gliadin and all these components of the wheat that can irritate the gut for many susceptible people, not for everyone, but for many. And that's one of the reasons that they're taken out of a lot of these diets like paleo and bulletproof and some of the stronger low-carb diets. Grains are the first thing to go. We have to overcome a lot of publicity about grains. Every dietitian you ever met is going, oh, whole grains and fruits and vegetables. Whole grains are not the same thing as fruits and vegetables by a long shot. You don't have to process fruits and vegetables to eat them. You can eat them right there, right? And they're loaded with nutrients. But the thing about grains that's really interesting from a historical point of view is that they allowed civilizations to happen. In fact, the father of the paleo movement, Dr. Loren Cordain, once wrote a paper called Cereal Grains, Humanity's Double-Edged Sword. And what he was talking about was the fact that before we had agriculture, before we had cereal grains, we didn't have villages, because we all just roamed the planet, hunting and gathering and fishing and doing all of that stuff. And what allowed us to develop cities and civilizations was the ability to grow food and to stay in one place. The double-edged sword part is we got less healthy, because grains aren't that great. They allow you to build civilizations. They allow you to feed lots of people. We couldn't have a world without them. But stop telling ourselves that this is a great nutritional bargain. There's nothing in grains you can't get from other things. They're not even big fiber heavyweights. I mean, if you look at the processed ones that we eat, like breads and cereals, just read the label and look at the amount of fiber. You will be lucky to find 2 or 3 grams of fiber in the average bread or pasta or any of these things that the dietitians tell us are so important for fiber. They're not. An avocado has way more fiber. Beans have 11 to 17 grams. A slice of bread has maybe 1 or 2. So we don't really need grains, but for the purposes of weight control, the problem with grains is twofold. One is that in almost every form we eat them in, they're processed junk. All the snacks that we eat them in, all the chips, the breads, the pastas, all of those are processed grains. So we would eliminate them not just because they're grains, but because they're processed. Because on this basic fundamental program, all you're going to do is eat real food. And processed food isn't real food. And the other reason why it's kind of a good thing that we can eliminate them as being not real foods is because even if they were prepared in a really old-fashioned way, you took some rolled oats and you just boiled them and there was no processing, all of which is great. That would be the way to consume them if you were going to consume them, but you and I both know that that is not how most of us consume them. And even in those forms, wheat-containing ones are going to have gluten, and gluten is going to be a problem for a lot of people. So The answer to the question of are grains considered a real food is not really. If you can do without them for a couple of weeks and see if you can work with those 4 food groups I talked about, food you could have hunted, fished, gathered, or plucked. If you can do that for a couple of weeks, you may find that the absence of the grains, the non-real foods, actually makes you feel a lot better, and you may be surprised at its effect on your waistline. This is Jonny Bowden. Keep the questions coming. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you on the next video.